The healing of the man with the withered hand, along with all of the other miracles that Jesus performed in Jerusalem, so enraged the Pharisees and the Herodians that he had to return to Galilee, withdrawing with his disciples to the lake. The people there were so eager to hear Jesus that it was necessary for him to enter into a boat and to teach and preach to the people from the boat. Matthew interpreted Christ's ministry to the Gentiles from the surrounding nations as a fulfillment of Isaiah chapter 42, verses 1 through 4. And even though these Gentile nations were not of the household of Israel, they too shared in the blessings as Christ preached, healed the sick, and delivered those who were possessed by demons. The next major event that we have in the life of Christ is the selection of the 12 apostles. The Jews expected the Messiah to appear, overthrow the Roman yoke of bondage, and reestablish the throne of David. They were looking for an earthly king to come and establish an earthly kingdom. When he did appear, however, Jesus proclaimed that his kingdom was not an earthly kingdom. It was a spiritual kingdom found in the hearts of men. Nevertheless, the time had come for Christ to organize his kingdom more fully, and being omniscient, all-knowing, Jesus Christ knew that his time on earth was nearing its end. And for his ministry and kingdom to continue, it would have to be committed to the hands of mortal men to see it through. The importance of the choice of these men was manifested as Jesus spent the night in prayer before making his selection. And afterward, he chose 12 men who would be with him at all times in all places. They would be companions in his travels, witnesses of his miracles, students of his doctrine, recipients of practical experience. They would be ambassadors of his kingdom and the foundation of its future growth. We find their names listed in Matthew chapter 10, Mark chapter 3, Luke chapter 6, and Acts chapter 1. Peter is always mentioned first among the 12. Andrew and James, John and Philip. We have Nathanael, who was also known as Bartholomew. There's Thomas and Matthew, who is also called Levi. There's James the Less and Judas, who's also known as Thaddeus. Simon Zelotes, and then always finishing the list is Judas Iscariot. The next major event that we'll take a look at here briefly is the Sermon on the Mount. Shortly after choosing the 12, Jesus gave the greatest of all sermons recorded in human history. The Sermon on the Mount is described by some as the inaugural address of Jesus, and certainly we couldn't do it justice in a short study like this. It'd be wise for every student to explore prayerfully the depths of this discourse, recorded in Matthew chapter 5 through chapter 7 and Luke chapter 6. Once again, it's Matthew chapter 5 through chapter 7 and Luke chapter 6. After concluding his sermon, we come to the next point that we want to highlight, and that's the healing of the centurion's servant. Jesus entered Capernaum, where a delegation of Jewish leaders met him. They'd been sent by a Gentile centurion who had asked them to ask Jesus to heal his paralytic and tormented servant. Jesus followed the elders as they started toward the officer's home, and as they neared the home, the centurion sent other friends to Jesus with another simple message. They said, "Lord, trouble not thyself, for I am not worthy that thou should enter under my roof. Wherefore neither thought I myself worthy to come unto thee. But say in a word, and my servant shall be healed. For I also am a man set under authority, having under me soldiers. And I say unto one, Go, and he goeth, and to another, Come, and he cometh, and to my servant, Do this, and he doeth it." And coupled with this humility, this Gentile, although not a proselyte to Judaism, had great faith in Jesus, and he understood his authority. He perceived that Jesus could speak an authoritative command, and that the demons would have to go forth in obedience to Jesus. And in response, Jesus exclaimed, "I say unto you, I've not found so great faith, no, not in all of Israel." Here was an absolute trust that deemed all things possible with Jesus. coming from a man who made no claim to outward or inward fitness to receive divine blessing because of his faith. And so Jesus told the centurion, "Go thy way, and as thou hast believed, so be it done unto thee." The next major event that we want to highlight is the raising of the widow's son in Nain. Located about 25 miles southwest of Capernaum, the village of Nain was the next place that Jesus visited following the healing of the centurion's servant. As Jesus, accompanied by his disciples and a large crowd of people, reached the town's gate, he met a funeral procession on its way to the cemetery. The procession was for the son of a well-known and respected widow. This widow's grief moved Jesus. He said consolingly to her, "Weep not." And then he came and he touched the bier and he commanded, "Young man, I say unto thee, arise." And immediately the son sat up and began talking. And as a result, great fear came upon those who witnessed this miracle. And here with this miracle, we have concrete evidence that Jesus was in fact the resurrection and the life. It's after this miracle that Jesus receives a message from John the Baptist. The news that a great prophet had appeared and spread throughout the land and reaching even the ears of John the Baptist, who had been imprisoned by Herod. John sent two of his disciples to Jesus asking, "Are you the Messiah, or should we seek for another?" This question should not be considered as an indication that John had lost faith in the coming Messiah, but rather an expression of faith that the Messiah would soon appear. When the messengers came, Jesus was busy in the midst of his ministries of curing and preaching to the popular throng made up of all classes. He healed many in that hour of diseases, plagues, evil spirits, and all kinds of bodily ills, and he gave sight to the blind. And in reply to John's question, Jesus simply told the disciples to tell John what they had seen. This is a fulfillment of Isaiah chapter 35, verses 5 through 6. The next event that we want to highlight is the upbraiding of the unrepentant cities by Jesus. Jesus did most of his mighty works in Galilee and principally around the Sea of Tiberias and the populous districts of Chorazin, Bethsaida, and Capernaum. He began to upbraid these three cities, which had been the scene of his greatest activities, because they did not repent. It would be more tolerable for Tyre, Sidon, and Sodom in the day of judgment than for these three cities. To whom much is given, much is required. And although they had freely received, they did not respond to the gospel and the message of Jesus Christ. Because the people had had the light of both Christ's words and Christ's works, they were subject to greater judgment than the Gentiles who had not had the same testimony. Why was it that the Jews rejected Christ? Was it because that he did not fulfill the messianic prophecies? Or was it because he could not substantiate his claims? In both questions, the answer is no. The Jews rejected the evidence of his messiahship and his deity because of their spiritual blindness. And Jesus ended his upbraiding of the cities with an invitation. "Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and ye shall find rest unto your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light."